I am your host, James Just. With me today is our friend of the show, Mr. John Cameron. John, there's some disturbing issues have taken place in this last week since we've come here before. There was a train crash and big explosion in Ohio, chemical spill, the whole 9 yards. And a disturbing action took place at the press conference. A News Nation reporter was arrested for trespassing or disturbing the peace, really for just giving a live report while the governor was speaking in the background. And of course he was released and charges were dropped like a day later, but why was he arrested at all? Is it not, you're not allowed to speak when a governor is speaking, back behind it? I don't understand. How does this decision actually come about where a police officer or someone in the governor's, staff says, hey, take care of that guy? How does it happen?
I have no idea. It was kind of a quick news blurb, and I didn't really find a lot of research on it. But the governor and I was talking. The one who wasn't talking was Buttigieg. What is his name?
Buttigieg.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's been hiding out pretty heavily. The transportation secretary. Why we have one of those, I don't know. And so I don't really understand, because the facts as I understand them are the governor was speaking, the reporter was doing live commentary while he was speaking, and he was arrested for, this reporter was arrested without warning for trespassing, handcuffed, and then booked, but then charges were dropped. So I have no idea. Maybe he was just on the governor's out list. I don't know.
Well, and here's the thing. They said, the police had asked him to stop his reporting while the governor was speaking. They actually stopped.
And he stopped.
And he stopped, and then they arrested him anyway.
Yeah.
So, and if they're doing this to reporters, right? This is the administration that talks about how important, press is, and and freedom and
I'm sorry, it's a cold.
And but yet when the press is inconvenient to them, they're not so much for freedom of the press. It's their freedom of their chosen press, right? I think is kind of what we've learned in the last few years.
Well, it's the difference between, I don't know if we're going to segue into the other thing on this or not, but the left years ago, well, at least the Democratic Party, and the ACLU were the champions of free speech, and pretty much free speech across the board, whether it was speech that they found objectionable or speech that they found suitable. And now it seems like the worm has turned, and those very same folks are all about censorship, which is strange, because I think the moral compass of both of the duopoly sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, have suffered, but it doesn't seem like they're really interested in freedom of the press. They're interested in only having the press present their side, and that I find that a little scary.
Yeah. And if you don't present your side, if you present a different perspective than what they want, you're not just wrong, you're evil incarnate, right? You are the worst things to ever crawl the earth. You are worse than Hitler.
Well, like Elon now. Elon was fine until he, went in and opened up the Twitter files to show that show the liberal Nazi organization that it was, and now he's evil. All of the popular press is anti Elon, and they're applauding the death of Twitter, which I haven't seen, by the way. Twitter's not dying. As a matter of fact, I think it's getting more fun again. But I don't know. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, we'll kind of segue into another topic just later on. But so why are Democrats defending the FBI, censorship, this McCarthyism, the Twitter files? It's okay. It works in their favor this time. It worked in their favor, but doesn't mean that it will work in their favor in the future. Simply because Trump was incompetent enough to use these tools for his benefit doesn't mean the next person won't be competent enough to use these tools they put in place for their benefit. So why are they doing it? Are they just not thinking far ahead? Did they ever believe in their supposed principles? Did they ever actually believe in truly free speech and
I would say short answer,
freedom?
no. That I don't think they did. They paid lip service to it while it was to their benefit. But it's becoming obvious that I mean, what is it? 40% of college students think that it's okay to shout down opposing speakers. I mean, that's crazy. If you would have said that, I mean, I'm old enough to be around the first kind of campus revolution of the 60s and 70s. And if you would have told somebody on the far left then that it was okay to shout down opposing speakers, they would have called you on it and said, well, what happens if that opposing speaker is us? We've been censored for years. We're not going to put up with anybody being censored. But now they do. I guess maybe when liberal firebrands get old, they just turn into fascists. I don't know. That might be it. That could be it.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
At least superficially, it doesn't.
No, I don't understand the short-term thinking because unless the Democrats believe that somehow we're going to enter a suddenly have a king and a queen and pass down leadership to the firstborn child, then they have to know that power changes, people's beliefs change, and that somebody else might be in power, and those people might choose to stifle their free speech. So their interest should be in promoting free speech for everybody. But you're right; it's very, very, very short-sighted thinking, and I said too many varies there, but it's short-sighted thinking.
Yeah.
And how people can be stupid enough to understand that the worm turns. I don't get it.
No, because it's not even that long ago where they were on the minority side where they were being silenced. It wasn't 5, 6, not even a decade ago on some of these issues. But nowadays they've kind of gone they've become what they claim to hate.
Well, and I think, the whole idea that there's something like 30% of young people in this country look favorably upon the Communist Party. And one of the things about the communists and socialists is not only doesn't it not work, and it's killed about 1 billion people, through starvation and wars and all the rest of that stuff. 7 million Ukrainians here, 50 million Chinese there. Pretty soon you add up to, 50 billion or like 1 billion. Much less people that starved to death due to the inefficiency of it. They're basically talk one thing and do another. They talk about human dignity and equality and all the rest of that. And it is absolutely all about power and control. And anybody who steps out of line in most countries that are branded communist or socialist faces death.
There are the gulags or re-education camps. If you're in China, they've got the re-education camps.
Now they call it gulag zona. Now that's the newer term. They don't call them gulags anymore.
Yeah, well. Yeah. The gulags. What is it they're calling the Uyghurs in China? They're just
re-education.
Yeah, they're just calling them re-education camps. They're not even being
camps,
all that silent about it. It's out in the open, and we ignore it. We just pretend it doesn't happen, which is kind of.
But
sad.
I don't really, defending the idea of so-called liberals, defending the FBI, defending censorship, and basically it's a new form of McCarthyism, and not understanding that it is frightening to me because, as you said, it's not only is it short-sighted, but it's illogical.
Well, we're going to go to something else that's short-sighted and illogical. Blue state wealth taxes. This idea that you can tax wealth instead of actual cash or income or spending. It's brought to you by teachers unions. Right, teachers unions are making the big push, and one of the questions is why are teachers unions making a big push for wealth taxes? Where's the connection? But the second question is, hasn't the recent market fluctuations kind of made people realize that wealth doesn't actually exist? Wealth is kind of an estimate at best, based upon a wide range of factors that are outside of the control of average people, like your house, you don't actually have much control over how much your house is worth. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the construction down the street.
Even if I kept it cleaner than I do, it still wouldn't be much worth.
No, if there's a redevelopment across the street from your house is going to be worth more. If the place across your street is a dump, if your neighborhood is falling down, your house is going to.
Mm-hmm. If they raise the levee in my neighborhood and I can't see the river anymore,
and one of the things we don't talk about is this desire we have for property values, is ever increasing property values. We don't talk about the downside of that people whose houses used to be worth $100,000 are now worth $500,000. And, you know, now in California, you are, for now, protected a little bit from that because of Prop 13. But in other states, you're not. And here in California, they want to get away with get rid of Prop 13 and start taxing you on that theoretical wealth of the theoretical value of your house.
Well, and here's the thing, though. If your house goes down in value, they're not going to give you a rebate.
No.
So they're just going to tax it when it goes up, but not make up for it when it goes down. Yeah, so if you tax people on wealth, and this is when everybody says, well, that guy didn't pay any taxes, and he's a billionaire. Well, yeah, he might be a billionaire, but the value of his business was upside down $100 million last year, $100 million loss. So not only is he not paying any taxes this year, but he's not paying any taxes for the next couple of years because tax laws are so convoluted that he can't write it all off this year. He has to do tax loss carry forward. Well, what happens if he's really profitable one year? I mean, no profit one year, like zero, not a loss, but zero, and then or $5, and then his profit goes to $1 million. He had a 200,000% increase in profit. Yeah, he went from being not profitable to being profitable. But nobody talks about it when it goes from 100,000 down to zero. So it's all, you know, and our tax system is so convoluted and so complicated that it's basically all smoke and mirrors anyway.
Well, what if you're say a Bitcoin millionaire, right? And one day you've got $1 million in Bitcoin, but 2 days, you know, and you have to pay your wealth tax. Okay, you pay your wealth tax, and then 2 days later, Bitcoin crashes.
I mean, like it did?
Like it did, and it never recovers. So next year, it comes the day. What do you do?
Yeah, well, so you if they're doing wealth taxes, then you declare a tax loss carry forward, and you don't pay taxes for the next 10 years. So there's really, but the idea that the biggest problem here is that people on the left, and I hate to use the word left and right, but let's call them socialist, communist. I refuse to call them liberal because liberal means something completely different. Ask somebody in Europe what liberal means, and they'll tell you it's a classic liberal. They don't understand that wealth is created. They think that there's a pie out there, and it's a pie, and there's only one pie, and it's got so many slices, and if somebody gets 18 slices, there's only 2 slices left for everybody else. It's not a pie. Wealth is created by work, by crazy long hours, by being smarter than the next guy, by being a better salesperson, a better marketer, a better scientist, better product developer, by hiring and training better employees, and people don't understand that wealth is created and that capital is used to create wealth. You take that capital and you invest in product and equipment and marketing and PR and research and training, and it creates more wealth. They just don't get it. And you know why? Because they've never worked for a living. They've always been in government.
Yeah, and even if you're just a payroll employee, you don't see all the various things. You don't see all the various machinations that someone has to go through to get that business off the ground, or to get that nonprofit off the ground. Even if it's a nonprofit, you still have to make money as a nonprofit. So you don't see
anybody that's ever worked for a small business does see it, though.
Yeah,
they see the guy that started the business, or gal, person started the business, working 70-hour weeks until they get to the point where they can hire another barista, and then pretty soon they have 5 coffee houses. So they see it and they feel it and they know it. But if you work for even an IBM, or somebody like that, there's a really good chance you don't see
Yeah, you're just
what goes on behind it.
You're a cog in the wheel,
Yeah.
and it's different.
Yeah.
And people don't think that, for a long time, for the first three years of running that coffee house or whatever, your employees may have made more money than you.
Yeah.
They may very well.
You pumped every single penny back into the business.
Into the business, so you
same
could buy
thing
another.
There are people who come here from, I'm just going to use this example, over and over and over again until somebody sends a complaint into the show. You escape communist China through Hong Kong. You come over here. You might have been a physician there. There's no way, you don't speak English, and your school isn't recognized by the AMA. So there's no way you'll ever be a physician. But you're a pretty good cook and you remember Mama's recipes. You scrape together a couple $100, borrow it from family and friends, and you open a restaurant. And you work from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night and sleep in the restaurant. And then pretty soon it's a successful restaurant, and your daughter goes to medical school. So that's the way wealth is created. That's the way it happens. And the people who have worked in government or worked in education, and I hate to call it work, or worked in large nonprofits and never seen that happen, don't understand it. So they think they should tax wealth. And we beat this to death. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
beat it to death. Yeah.
Well, here's another thing we can beat to death, and at risk of John going on another rant. Across the globe.
That wasn't a rant. Was that a rant?
Yeah, probably not.
Right.
But I'm going to call it a rant just
Okay.
because it sounds better coming out my mouth.
Yeah, right.
Across the globe, government healthcare systems are failing their communities.
Well, I'm going to rant on this one.
Yeah.
Well, no,
We probably heard this rant before. It's probably not a new one, but
a short rant.
it's not a surprise.
I'm going to keep this rant down to. I'm going to look at the clock. This rant is going to go 3 minutes.
All right, here you go.
Healthcare even in countries where the government is not involved in it is a monopoly. There is some governing board who decides who can be a nurse, a dentist, a doctor, an anesthetist, a nurse anesthetist, and an anesthesiologist, a radiologist, all the rest of that. There's a limited supply. All countries in the world, right? And then you get the government involved and wonder why things go south. So there's the Bismarck model and I can't remember the other one, not Butterfield. There's another model. The guy that started the mess that's the National Health Service in England. And governments got involved in healthcare, and it was probably a good thing to have a minimum standard of healthcare for the poorest of the poor. Because it used to be when people got old, they got poor. Now when people get old, they get rich, because of the value of money. And people were holding up these wonderful healthcare systems in England and in Canada and in other places, low countries in Europe, as models, and horrible capitalism here is the terrible for-profit hospitals is a horrible, horrible thing. Well, now you're seeing those healthcare systems fall apart. 1/4 of the doctors and nurses in the NHS in England have left. There are people who are waiting for 230 people a week in England are dying from heart attacks because they can't get them in hospitals soon enough, because the average wait time for an ambulance is like almost an hour. And when they do get to hospitals, because they don't have any place to put the sick people that are in the hospitals when they leave, when they're well, they're keeping them in the hospital. So real sick people, when they come in, don't have anywhere to go so they can operate on them. And it's a nightmare. And anybody that wasn't absolutely sure that nightmare was going to happen lives in wherever not Wookiees, yeah. Wookiees, no. Where there's cuddly little things from Star Wars that lives in trees and they're about that big. And Ewok.
Yeah, Ewoks,
lives in the world of Ewoks.
Yeah, lives in a fantasy land of Star Wars.
So anyway, that's 3 minutes. I did it.
Well, it's no surprise to us that they've completely removed any type of market forces from healthcare. Yeah. And then they complained that capitalism has failed, market forces have failed healthcare. Well, no, you haven't tried actual market forces.
Well, we did in this country until the 60s. Richard was a little bit older than me, and in recent history, people had health insurance for catastrophic care.
Mhm.
Like if you need an operation, that's when health insurance kicked in. And everything else, I mean, even if you broke an arm, most people would, healthcare was so cheap compared to what it is now, you'd reach into your savings and you'd go, and your country doctor probably would even show up to your house and set the arm, and you'd write him a check. Maybe you'd give him Bessie the cow, but you'd write him a check and that'd be fine. Now, I looked at the bill when I went to the emergency room the other day. I didn't pay it. My quote-unquote health insurance did. It was $17,000.
Yeah.
And there was basically nothing wrong with me.
Yeah. Oh, you should see the bill that I didn't pay, but the insurance paid for fixing a broken arm that didn't need anything but a cast put on.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Do you
it.
remember how much it was?
Not off the top of my head, but
Was
it was
more than
thousands of
that
dollars.
17,000?
It wasn't 17,000, but it was just all it needed was a cast.
Yeah. I could put a cast on.
Yeah.
I know how to do that. I could probably set it too. There's a chance if it broke through your skin, you'd get an infection and die. But if it didn't, I could.
No, it broke
I'm not
nice and
saying I'm a licensed. Don't
No.
worry. I'm not going to do it.
It
I'm
broke
gonna
nice
go
and
to
straight.
jail.
It didn't even need setting, John. All they had to
Yeah.
do was put a cast on.
Casts aren't protected a little bit.
Yeah, that's it. So, and yet thousands of dollars on something that you could have probably gotten done for a couple $100 at
Yeah.
the. And
Well,
anyway.
in Guatemala, you could have got it done for a couple $100.
Couple $100,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, more government intervention in free markets. A new bill would loosen the square footage limits for dense housing. Essentially, what's happening is the federal government wants to tell communities that you have your restrictions are too strict.
Restrict.
Your restrictions on the size
Isn't
of housing.
this is state of California, isn't it? Or
No,
is
this
it
is the feds. The
feds?
feds want to go around and
Ah.
tell states and local communities this is confusing, John.
How many houses you can have on a piece of property?
Yeah, well, how small you can make your house, because a lot of communities say your houses have to be 2,000 square feet or something,
And they have to occupy so much of your.
so much you're probably and
Yeah.
and the feds now want to say no, those limits are too big, so you have to reduce them. Is essentially what's going to happen.
Well, what's happening now is that all the states, or a lot of the states, are trying to make it easier for people to build more dense housing, like the mother-in-law units they call it. They're not. They're what are they? Other dwelling units, or I don't know.
Yeah, I forget what the term is.
DU, whatever.
Yeah, but the
dwelling
mother-in-law
unit.
houses, right?
Yeah. And what happens is that after those laws get passed on the macro scale, on the micro scale, local zoning commissions basically just remove all the teeth from it, and they put on they tweak the system to where even though you're supposed to be able to build this, you can't get a permit for it. So. The idea that the federal government, through its one-size-fits-none approach, can top-down tell all these places what they can do is crazy. First of all, the federal government doesn't have the power to do that. That's the states' rights issue, pure and simple. So I don't know why. But there are laws on the books now where people can build all these. ADU, additional dwelling unit, isn't that what it is?
Probably.
ADU?
So, I don't know.
That's probably some evil acronym I shouldn't even be mentioning, and yet it's not happening. Because the the paperwork involved in it and the hassle of doing it is such a barrier that people don't do it.
Permitting fees and hassles.
Well, and then the CC&Rs, if you live in I'm under the auspices of two associations. I live in well, it's not really a condominium. Let's call it a condominium because it's too hard to explain. And I'm in that association, but because I live in a neighborhood, I'm in that association as well. So I paid $200 a year for the privilege of maintaining a barn and a park that I never use, and if I want to use the barn, I got to pay for it. And I never agreed to it just because I live in the neighborhood. And the guy that owned all the land and sold it to the developer had that written into selling the land to the developer. So it's crazy. I mean, the craziest part of it is that anytime you build a house in California, most places you pay a fee that goes to build low-income housing. So they add $100,000 to the cost of the house you built and take that money to supposedly build low-income housing. But because of that fee and the permits and all the environmental restrictions, a low-income house in California costs $600,000 to build. It's insane.
Yeah,
that was a rant.
Yeah, in Sacramento, your house, your brand new house, is $100,000 more expensive just for the permit. Yeah,
at least.
Just the permit. At least. Just the permit to build the house.
That doesn't even count the environmental costs.
Environmental costs or any of the other permits.
You probably have to pay they call it market wage, is basically union wage, which I know a whole bunch of people that aren't part of a union. You can build a house real quick.
All right, John, but I'm going to interrupt us because I do want to cover one more topic, and we got 3 minutes. James Clapper accuses Politico of this is just hilarious. Accuses Politico of distorting his letter on Hunter Biden's laptop being possible Russian disinformation.
Well, they actually printed his freaking letter, and he said by printing the letter they distorted it because he didn't really mean what they didn't point out that his letter said could, not did. 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 He was throwing a little tantrum. Could, not did. Could, not did. Couldn't picture that. Picture me when I'm hungry.
Yeah, but the whole Russian thing was misinformation. They were the ones engaging in the Russian misinformation, and now they're whining about, you're some of these people just, they're exasperating, John. I'm speechless, literally. They're sitting here, this whole Russian, we now know from the Twitter files and from everything else that there was no real Russian, misinformation campaign. No.
Well, there was Ukrainian misinformation, but it's not that the Ukrainians were guilty of it. So we were guilty of messing with their politics, but that's a different.
Yeah, and so what's happening
and Clapper should be in prison for being what's the word, the medical term for somebody who does not know how to tell the truth? Pathological liar. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I'm not stating a fact, so that isn't slander. So, but I'm willing to bet we could hook you up to that lie detector that doesn't work worth a darn, and every time you open your mouth, it's going to go zzz, zzz, zzz.
Yeah, they never take those lie detectors publicly, right?
No, that would be fun to watch.
They never would. So we got a minute left. Exodus of California continues as population declines.
Shocker.
In the last 2 years, 500,000 people have left California, and we are not surprised, but we are out of here.
Excellent.
We are out of here. Thank you, John, for being with us. Thank you for joining us, and we get to talk to 30 seconds because my ear was wrong. By the way, it was what was it? Hey, Mr. Gale, what was that term? Accessory dwelling unit. That's what they call it now.
Accessory dwelling unit.
It's an accessory dwelling unit.
Thank you.
And we are accessories. Thank you for being with us tonight. And maybe next week we won't be so tired.
I'm going to go to my dwelling unit and go
to bed.
Sleep.
Good night.
Well, first I'm going to, love the pup.